Today, we're chatting with Brendan One. Now, Brendan is a writer, producer, director, performer, and all round creative. And he'll be running a workshop for us about producing live comedy. You can find the link to that in the description or at spaceonearth.co. For now, though, please sit back and enjoy the episode. I think an interesting place to start might be just to hear, in your own words, how would you describe yourself in terms of the work that you do?
Poor. I have a I have a weird answer for that one because I don't really. I hate saying I'm like this or that. Like
Yeah.
the and this is the wackiest thing to say. Like I just say like I'm a creative
Yeah.
because I really do like to do everything. Like it's not and like putting myself in one box. I always don't feel. Maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome, but I don't feel like I just fit that box fully. I'm like, oh, I like that, but I also like other stuff as well, and I just want to like. They call it there's another word for it, slasher or something. Not slasher.
Slasher things like slasher films.
No, yeah, that. But
Oh, no,
there's
no, slash. No, it is like it's because it's something slash something
yeah,
slash.
isn't it
Yeah,
slasher? Yeah, yeah. There's a term for that where it's like or slashy or something. I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah, there's that term, and I'm like, yeah, I feel like that was perfect. Is like the perfect encapsulation term for me because I'm like, I just like doing a bunch of other stuff. I'm just like, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not like I've made film. I made stuff like, but like I'm a bit of filmmaking. I'm a bit of comedy. I'm a bit of writing. I'm a bit of producing. Or just like yeah. So yeah, so I'd say like I'm if anything like a creative producer would be a good title, but I don't know, just I'm just a creative man.
no, no, I like that. I think that's a really interesting answer and a good way to put it too. Like something you said at the start of that was that the imposter syndrome sort of can creep in.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like that can happen if you try and just label yourself with one thing, because then you start questioning, like, well, am I a director?
Yeah.
Can I say I'm a director?
Yeah.
How much have I directed? This other person's directed more than me.
Yeah.
And it starts becoming like a bit of a spiral like that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're like someone like me who's self-taught essentially. So whether or not I can qualify and I have technically, I've technically directed a web series. I've technically directed a short film. So it's like I am a director per se, but like I don't know, I just don't feel like that's a great like describer of who I am and my brand, man. No, I'm just like, yeah, I like to do a lot of bunch of things. And there's definitely things I'm like, no, I'm not that person. And that I'm happy to tell you that I'm not that.
Yeah.
But yeah, to describe myself, I don't know, just like creative person is always good.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that, I guess, having that approach, I assume it's probably made you more confident just jumping in and trying out things?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. It can just make, it just goes, because once you like, yeah, because everything I've done, I've just literally formed myself into and be
Yeah.
like, all right, we'll figure this out. And sometimes success, sometimes not. But yeah, like most of the times it's just easier to, like, I'm someone who likes to learn by doing rather than like the textbook stuff. Because I think for me, like, once I get to once I learn by a textbook, I can only, it's like you put yourself in like a prison or something. You
Yeah.
like a mind prison or something. Like you put yourself in like this framework where you're like I have to do all the things within this box, or else it's not directing or it's not
Mm.
writing. So, and I never liked doing that. I liked like figuring it out and then like learning later on is like, oh, okay, what I've been doing and learning kind of correlates to these rules of all these guidelines of directing or writing or whatever. And it's kind of like, oh, good. That makes me feel confident that I'm on the right path to whatever I want to go to.
Yeah,
That makes
totally.
sense?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
definitely. And I feel like that sort of textbook is a good analogy in the sense that if you're just learning by textbooks all the time, you're basically learning what someone else has done before and worked for them.
Yeah.
And they're just like, repeat this, repeat this, repeat this. This is the way to do it.
Yeah.
But they don't always get you like actually thinking and learning how to think on the fly in situations and
Yeah.
actually, I guess, push boundaries and like go against what has been suggested to you previously.
Yeah. Because I don't think anyone thinks about their whatever they do and be like, okay, I learned this move because of text of
Yeah.
Appendix A from this book, specific book. I think it's just more like, oh, I figured this out from obviously experience, but also like, oh, and it matches kind of like what these books have said. Um, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to
No, no, no,
say.
no, it definitely does. So I think, yeah, it might be interesting to go back to, I'm curious always at high school,
Yeah.
And some people had really great times at high school, other people not as much.
Yeah.
But I'm always intrigued as to like what people sort of end up doing after high school versus what they were doing within it. So the reason I ask this is like from myself, I was always doing sort of creative stuff, but I think I didn't have like the confidence to really fully invest and get involved in it.
Yeah.
And so I'd kind of held back a bit, and I'd be more just like I don't know, like I was pretty well behaved overall, but I just mean that I think like there would have been times where I probably would have wanted to say try out some more like drama or something or
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
out something like that. But I didn't because I don't know, peer pressure, just
Yeah.
social things like that. So I'm just curious to like your experience sort of growing up, like were you always just like making stuff and sort of like did you have confidence doing that or is that something that sort of came by later?
Yeah, definitely during primary school, I was drawing a lot. I remember drawing a lot, like even in my spare time, I just draw, 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 draw. And then high school, I don't. Yeah, like I think it was like you, where I did some stuff like when there was like writing stories for like storytelling like English class, I'd do kind of like I was like enjoying that, but I didn't really like, it's like one of the things where it's like don't show off too much or else you get bullied or whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
essentially being up. But like, so I never really like. I just like, just did enough and kind of felt generally interested in it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, also like, I went to a boys' school as well, so that's like a boys' school that was pretty much like, there's a strong emphasis on sport.
Yeah, yeah.
So and I didn't really like. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess the art thing's a bit lame or whatever, so I won't do too much of that. So I think that was kind of like that was the vibe in high school, and then yeah, obviously in uni, that's when I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I've got all this access to all these like facilities in uni, and so let's just play around with it. I remember in uni, like there was a in the library. It was like literally like the first month I've realized this, like my student card you can hire movies in the library.
All right, yeah.
There was like a massive DVD kind of collection there, and I
So
was
this is
like,
obviously pre-Netflix
this is
and,
pretty
and
Netflix.
everything
Yeah,
like
100%.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is like in 2005 or 2006. And so I remember like this huge collection of DVDs, and next to the DVDs there were TVs that you can go watch them at.
All right,
So,
yeah.
and I just remember making this plan where like I'm gonna watch all these great cinema movies during like my downtime between classes, and so that's what I essentially do. I essentially like borrowed some DVDs. Like there was like a 3 hour like wait time between my next class. Just watch some movie, and that was kind of like another like education because it was like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was watching movies and during and it was great. It was amazing. So yeah, it was like yeah during uni I feel like I thrived and stuff.
Out of curiosity, was that what did you study? What course?
I studied Asian Studies, Bachelor of Asian Studies at La Trobe.
Okay, so
So
I was just asking in the sense of like, obviously, like cinema studies in that sense was probably not the main thing.
no,
That's something that you just sort of discovered you had a real big interest in at the time that then also complemented what you were doing
yeah,
in your
yeah.
course?
So I remember because like I generally did want to study this course. Like it was more. I also had this like weird. I don't know how this weird wisdom thing where I was like, don't study the thing that you like, study the thing that surrounds that because
Yeah.
like so I really enjoyed like culture and like I was really I mean I still am but I was like obsessed with like getting out of Australia. So anything
Yeah, yeah.
at the time I was like, I just finished uni, I finished high school. I was like, all right, we'll just do uni and then we'll go travel. And I was so this idea of travel, this theme of travel, which was like really a theme of my 20s essentially. That was like prominent in my mind. So I was always studying about like culture and I was generally interested in culture, history, and languages. And so all the other stuff was like, okay, cool. This is like extra bonus, and this is something I like, but at the moment this is my focus. And so I just remembered like, um, yeah, like kind of focusing more on that rather than the creative stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I find that really interesting because I guess people either go to uni, they do something they want to do,
yeah,
or they do a kind of backup. Like for me, it was the backup that I
yeah,
fell
yeah,
into because I didn't have the enter score to get into film and TV, which is the main thing I wanted to
yeah, right,
do. And so then I did a bachelor of multimedia,
yeah,
but then I kind of started trying to tweak it, and when there was a chance to do a project that was a movie, I'd try and go down that path a little
yeah,
bit
yeah,
more,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. But um, yeah, I just love this idea that you went there to study something that you were really into, but then developed some other passion that actually works really well with it. Like, because I think sometimes that you can have this thing that you're really passionate about, and it's got nothing to do with like if you've studied commerce or something
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So I think, yeah, that's just like a really interesting kind of like marriage in a sense of,
Yeah, and I definitely think like having the interest in in that stuff actually helps me out anyway with like any art form I do, because like I like to think I have a bit more of like an international brain. Like I'm never thinking about the small stuff. I'm more thinking about high concept, and I think that
mm,
studying something else that's not like film related or writing related, it just helped me kind of broaden my like, oh yeah, well, like my life is different to someone living overseas, for example.
yeah, yeah.
So it just gives you that broad perspective. Having said that, I did in like second year, or actually first, yeah, so start of second year, I did somehow find out about um a film club in uni, and I remember I applied to make like, because you can apply for this like short film like program thing where they give you money and you make the short film.
Is that way through the film club?
Yeah, it was from the film club.
So you're
Yeah,
already in the film club.
I just joined on the second year
Okay.
because I didn't know about it, and then I was like, oh cool, let's, yeah, might as well see what I can do and make a short film, and it was really cool. And yeah, and I made a horrible short film. Like I think, yeah, oh god, it just shivers.
What was it about?
It was called it was okay, it was called, okay, it's about it was called The Battle Within,
Yeah. All right.
and it was a psychological kung fu m- short, and it was about a guy preparing for a fight,
Okay. Yeah.
for like a tournament fight or something. And and plot twist, like the fight happens in his mind, and then cut to black, he gets punched out.
Okay.
That was the short. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Was it like somewhat comedic as well?
No,
It
it
was
was
just
dead serious.
dead serious?
It was dead
Yeah.
serious. It was like I'm making art here,
Yeah.
man. It was dead serious, and I think, yeah, I don't want to. I haven't watched it in ages. But I just remember thinking about it and being like, oh.
Do you still have the
I think I
file, the
do.
footage, anything?
Yeah, yeah, I think I do. I kind of, I'm too scared to open it.
That's
Uh,
right. One day. One day.
one day.
I think it's nice to have those things though,
Yeah,
because there'll be some time where you want to look back on it, and it can be a nice place to see like where you came from in the sense of this is the stuff I was making when I first started making
yeah.
stuff, and now look at the stuff that I'm making now.
Hmm.
Because I often think like as well, just any sort of creative person going on a journey of starting to make things, there's like when you first start making things, if you were able to like look into the future and see the stuff you're making now, you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
You'd be like, I could never make something like
yeah,
that compared to that. So I think whenever I, end up going back and looking at old stuff I've done, like I always kind of have that lens to it of not like, oh, look how bad or embarrassing this is, but it's kind of like, oh wow, like that's what that's what I
yeah,
did and thought was like that I was really proud of that back then and I
yeah,
thought it
yeah.
was really good. But, now I've sort of, doing this work. So I think it can be like a nice humbling thing
Oh,
to
100%. And
watch.
like you can, it's like without that, you wouldn't go into this, and without that, you wouldn't go into this. It's like that. It's like that. What do you call it? Stepping stone thing. You can see
Yeah.
the exact path from which you led to, but it is still cringe when you're just
Yeah.
like,
Totally,
it's
totally.
like, oh man, I took this so seriously, and I thought this was the best thing ever in my life. Yeah. So anyway,
Totally. I'm not trying to dismiss that feeling because that's definitely still there a little bit as well.
yeah,
On that. So after you made that, did that start, I guess, more of a sort of, I was going to say landslide, but that sounds like it was out of control. But I mean, like, I guess start more of a delving into wanting to make more films
yeah.
and
Not
produce more
not
things?
make more films. No, it definitely, that one made me realize, oh, how difficult it was,
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, cool. Like that's how hard it was. I'm like, oh, okay, this is. Um, I didn't really have an interest in making anything anyway in film, and then so I kind of got interested in making in making music,
Oh, cool.
because I
Yeah.
had like, so in that short film, I not only did I write it, I starred in it. I I think I technically directed it as well. Yeah, I think I technically directed it because there was a cinematographer, and then I also wrote like there's a song in it, and I wrote the
Yeah.
song, like it's I was a composer as well technically. So like, and I had a lot more fun making the song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so I kind of like dabbled in music in a bit, and made some songs and stuff like that. Um, and then but that kind of like then I realized, oh, this is not for me. It's like one of the things where like there's a theme throughout my 20s where I was like, I'm doing this because I thought this is what I want to do, but it's actually because I think it makes me look cool. There's that
Oh, right. Okay.
there's that theme where it's like, oh, cool, I want to do this thing because I'm a musician, and people like musicians and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not doing this for the right reasons. I'm doing it because of my ego.
Yeah.
And so there's a theme of that constantly in my life where but hopefully now I'm in the right path. Ugh. But yeah, so then I dabbled in music. I was like really interested like into like creating like music and like songs and like
Mhm.
how that happens. And I was like really inspired by like I really got into the Beatles, and so I got inspired by like how they got into like creating music and stuff like that. And then stopped that, went off traveling, for first half of my 20s, and during that time I started getting into travel blogging.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Um,
Whereabouts were you traveling?
I lived in in uni. I'll tell you that I'll tell you this story. I lived in second year uni. I lived in Japan for 1 year, came back for 1 year. Then after I graduated uni, I went to Taiwan for 1 year. Then came back for 1 year. Went to France for 3 months. Came back for 1 year. Went to England for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a bit of back and forth between Australia and somewhere else.
Yeah, that's great.
And then so pretty much when I was in London, that's when I was like, okay, I want to give this travel blogging thing a fair go. And so I'm like, I was part of like this travel blogging community. It was exciting, and like I got to like just and that was really for me kind of formal in the sense of like working on how to write, how to like how to structure my days and time so that my dedicated time to write this thing. And yeah, I learned how to like also like producing skills as well, like
Hmm.
learning about like social media marketing and digital marketing and like promo and stuff like that. And so I learned a bit like that, and learned during that time during travel blogging. And then it was literally um and then when I came back to Melbourne, that's when I was like, okay, I kind of stopped that and was like, let's focus on what I really want to do, which is comedy.
Yeah.
And then comedy, filmmaking, blah blah blah.
Find that interesting with the travel blogging because I think again it's like your film that you made in uni that
Yeah.
it's something where you have to do everything. Like
Yeah.
you're writing it, you're editing it, you're like you said, everything. You're producing it, you're
Yeah.
filming it, all this sort of stuff. So I think again it's just in the sign of just I guess dabbling in different
Yeah.
things and probably then getting a pretty decent knowledge across the board.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Again,
Um,
that like comes back to my uni. It's like I didn't focus on the thing. I was like, I wanted to focus on other stuff that informs the eventual end goal, whatever it
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah.
whatever that may be. So yeah, I think having like a diverse skill set will help you create your kind of style or voice or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, it's also like coming back to the kung fu thing. It actually comes back to that because I one of my favorite things about kung fu movies, and especially Hong Kong kung fu movies, there's always a genre about like the protagonist learns a style of kung fu
Mhm.
and then realizes that style of kung fu doesn't work. Then so he
Okay.
then goes on to learn a new style of kung fu, and then at the end of the movie defeats the bad guy by using a mix of the two styles of kung fu.
Yeah.
And so um there's something called cross skilling, I think it's called, where like um you learn the skills of a different discipline and somehow incorporate that into your discipline.
Yeah.
And so I really like that idea of like cross skilling. Like there might be something that's completely out of left field that you don't really think you might use, but then somehow you use it. An example of this actually is, the creator of the engineer of the bullet trains.
No, I don't
No,
know.
okay. So the story about him is like because the bullet trains have a weird like nose.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
if you've seen those in
Yeah,
Japan.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a little beak and then goes onto like a thing. The reason why that's designed that way is because the guy who started engineering, the first person engineering it, was inspired by birds,
Yeah.
and that's because he's a bird lover.
Oh, right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's a bird lover, and he realized, oh wait, they have beaks. Why don't we try that on these Shinkansen, and it works.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so like
totally.
that,
Yeah.
and that's like I love those ideas where it's you like using like something from a different discipline and then somehow incorporate that into your thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I feel almost that's like the best way to grow in a sense. Like once you know the basics of how something
Mm.
works, like then being able to bring in other influences,
Yeah.
whether that is from another sort of similar skill or just by going out and just doing something, seeing something,
Mm.
and then just trusting that your mind is going to start, you know, putting the puzzle together
Yeah.
and joining things up in sort of interesting ways,
Yeah.
and knowing that that's like a unique way that you're going to then, some a unique thing that you can then bring to whatever that initial discipline is.
Yeah.
Um,
100%, and I'm a big believer of that. Like anything can be like that, you know. That's why it's like important to like, like I said, learn. Actually, this is my thing. Is like learn how to learn. That's like
yeah,
probably my main like advice. Is like figure out how you learn stuff, and then once you figure that out, you can pretty much learn anything as long as you're interested in it, or you find your way in. Because I'm like a big believer that you can learn anything as long as you figure out the way that makes it click for you.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
sure.
as long as you find your way in, then it's like, oh, this makes it interesting. Um, my friend, her now husband is a tradie,
Mhm.
and shout out to reading chat. And so one time, like, chat is a electrician, and sorry, no, air conditioning guy, air conditioning maintenance guy. Oh no, he's like air condition. That's what he does. Anyway, so like, and so he's like super passionate about air conditioning,
Yeah.
and so the way he explained air conditioning units, I was like, oh, okay, I understand this now, and like I was interested in it. So it's like there's always a way in. It just takes a specific door to figure out that.
Yeah, totally. That sort of reminds me that like at uni, when first started, because there were a lot of art and design
Mm,
related subjects. Some were more on the art side, some were more on the design side. But art theory was one that like first semester you wouldn't take it seriously because it
mm,
was just it just seemed too like high of a concept,
yeah,
when you're just keen to start making things.
yeah,
But then it was, I think it might have been second year or something like that. We still had to keep doing theory classes. And there was one theory professor that I had, and I can't remember his name, but it's like just the way that he taught and how he explained things. It was in such an accessible way, and he did it with such like passion
yeah,
that I couldn't help but just get hooked
yeah,
on that. So then suddenly I'm like leaving class and I'm like, you know what? Caravaggio was a pretty amazing painter. Like, and it's all these things where up until that point, I'd never really had any interest in like the theory side or anything
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But I think like to what you're saying, that it just sometimes can take a different way in.
yeah,
And whether it's something you find or just how someone presents it to you,
yeah,
once you find that, it can then just completely unlock like your way of thinking
yeah.
on basically everything.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure trying to figure that out for like mathematics or something like that because
Yeah.
I'm not I hate maths. I don't understand it, but I know people love it. I know people think in numbers, and I'm really envious of those people that can do that. And I want to figure out. I want to like know what's the way in to think creatively with numbers. I feel like Christopher Nolan's that kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's like figured out how to be creative with numbers because that's all he does in his films.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that's like a YouTube wormhole waiting for you just to dive down.
Yeah,
Like you find someone on there who like explains it away and you're like, all right, great.
this
Now
guy.
I've just watched 4 hours of, explaining maths equations
Hell
or
yeah.
something, or how numbers work and relate to each
Yeah,
other.
if you got his YouTube channel, let me know. I'm
It's
all for that. Let me watch that.
see if we can find
Yeah,
one.
sure.
um so yeah, I guess with the travel blogging, you said you came back
Mhm.
and then you stopped doing that. Was that just circumstances that you given that you weren't traveling, to somewhere that was not home
Yeah.
effectively, you stopped it then, or did you sort of lose any, interest in an aspect of that
Um.
process?
So that I know exactly the answer for that one because I freaking vividly remember this. So towards the end of I was on like so when you go overseas and work in London, for example, in UK, you get a 2-year visa, and my visa was about to expire, and I was desperate to try and find a job, like just a job that would sponsor me so that I can stay extra long in London, even
Mm.
though the circumstance of which I was living in London was pretty like kind of, yeah, pay pocket to, was it called pocket to mouth kind of thing where is that the saying? Pocket of mouth?
I'd
No.
say it's like you have no money, and as soon as you get money,
Yeah,
it's
what's the
you're
saying?
feeding
Is it
yourself.
pocket of mouth?
I feel like pocket to mouth makes
Is it
sense.
mouth to no, what is it? I don't know. Hand to
Mouth
mouth.
to pocket, hand to mouth. I don't. I was on board for pocket to mouth.
Pocket of mouth. There you go. Anyway, it goes in your pocket, and then from there it goes to your mouth. Like anyway, so I was not making I was not making any money, like a lot, any money at all. And so yeah, but I was still desperate to like stay in UK because I didn't want to go home. And I remember I remember having a phone call with a recruiter who was like trying to sell me this job. And I was in the supermarket doing some groceries,
Mhm.
and I was like kind of not listening to her, and I was like, and I was just like doing my shopping and stuff, and just like, yep, yep, and she like cut me short and said, "Hey, look, I don't think you're listening to me. You know, like if you're serious about this, call me back. I'm gonna end this conversation," and she just cut the call,
All right.
and I was like, "Whoa, shit!" And then I kind of was thinking about like, why wasn't I listening to her? Why wasn't I listening to this person talk about this job that could potentially keep me in London? And so then I was kind of like down on myself because I was like, I want to stay here, but then I wasn't doing the effort to stay here. So then I went back home, and I remember this because I was like, it was dark, and I just sat in the darkness. I just
Oh,
sat on the
really? Yeah.
couch and for like it must have been like 2 hours, just thinking, and I just sat there like, and no one was home. My housemates were away, and I just sat there, not think like just thinking about what happened, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? What do I want to do? And so then I came to the realization. I was like, what do I want to do? Well, I want to do this creative thing. I want to somehow make TV. I want to make film. I want to do something creative with my
Yeah. Yeah.
life.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so once I made that realization, then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go home now.
All
So
right.
so
Great.
then I made that decision on the night, and then so then I accept. It was almost like I accepted my fate. I was like, okay, my visa's ending. Cool, let's go. Let's just go home. And so then once I accepted that fate, then I was like, okay, I'm on the wane of this kind of this travel blogging thing. I gave it a good crack. You know, I was kind of like I wasn't posting every day or every week. I was posting like once every couple of weeks or so. I also like mine wasn't like I wasn't travel blogging like I wasn't because like travel blogging it's like sometimes you think oh I'm writing about my travels.
Yeah.
I wasn't more really interested in personal kind of blogging. I was more interested in exploring um like it was kind of like mini essays really like what I was writing because I really liked talking about like culture and stuff, and so it was using my uni degree. So my travel blog was essentially like me thinking about ideas of like what is the best national anthem, like
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
musically what
Yeah.
is the best national anthem out there, and and me discussing different types of national anthems. Or another one was about yeah, like what's the best films about Paris,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like it was a bit like that kind of cultural kind of mini essays essentially. So
That's
yeah.
really cool. That's as opposed to things like this is what I'm eating for lunch today.
Yeah, I never found that interesting. I found out everyone was doing that.
Yeah.
And so I was like to think a bit more outside the box. I was like, "Oh, let's just continue writing about doing essays." Like I really
Yeah.
enjoyed writing essays about stuff I liked and cared about, or like yeah, and, and like so what was the other like what was one of my favorite essays? One of my favorite essays I wrote was about oh, well, I did this in uni. So one of my essays was about karaoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so about how like the purpose of karaoke is that my fear of karaoke is that the shitter you are in karaoke, the better you are at
Yeah.
karaoke. And that was and that was the kind of essays I like to write about. Sorry, so back to what I'm doing. So once I realized I was like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I just kind of shifted my focus onto like, all right, so how do I do this? How do I like get into this TV film world or whatever?
hmm
Because that's why I am interested in that kind of world. It's like, okay, well, what do you like? I don't want to do drama because I don't like drama. Comedy, okay, I think comedy is fun. Comedy is really fun. Let's figure out how to do that. And so then I found improv, and then it was like, okay, that opens up the door for all these other stuff that happened since.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
you went to Hoopla in the UK, is that right?
yeah, yeah.
Was that when so you had you done improv before?
So I did a short form at Impro Melbourne in I think 2010, 2011.
Okay, yeah.
And I think I was in the same class as another improviser, comedian, Matt Jenner.
All right.
I
Yeah.
think we actually don't know, but we kind of like we're like I think we did it in the same time because we were talking about Impro Melbourne one time,
Yeah.
and I think we were in the same class, but we don't know because we can't find the receipts.
Yeah.
So I did like one term with of improv with my friend, in 2010 or something, and then when I went to London, I did a term or two with Hoopla, and I actually got, and that was actually my first time performing as well because it was, and they're both short form. So I
Yeah,
did
cool.
like, I did a show in London. I remember doing that, and that was quite fun, and exhilarating. Being like, oh, that's fun, that was cool, it was amazing. Didn't think anything about it, just been more like, oh, that was cool. I like to learn more about this art form. And then when I came back to Melbourne, I was like, oh, I've done Impro Melbourne. I've done short form. I want to what's something different, and then so I found this like Chicago style, and so then I figured out long form and did all that.
For Space and Earth, we have a Discord server, which is completely free to join. If you're not familiar with Discord, basically it's a place where you can have an online community and you can chat about things in various channels. So if you want to jump on there and talk about improv, talk about sketch, talk about stand-up comedy, talk about acting, talk about the latest TV show you've seen, you can do that in different channels. So we'd love to have you join that. The links are available at spaceandearth.co. And like I said, completely free to join. We'd love to see you there. I think something from your story there about traveling and being overseas and then wanting to come back. I think it was really nice to hear, um, even though it sounded like, it was in some ways quite sort of like existential and questioning like, what am I doing? What do I want to
Yeah.
do? To hear you be like, I through having that thought process, it made me realize what I wanted to do and come back home.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I feel like a lot of times people travel, go overseas, like how I probably have as well. And then you come back and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Was it just an escape to to just go
Yeah, yeah,
away
yeah.
and not think about, being an adult
Yeah.
and moving on with life in that sort of sense?
That's what it was for me. It was like, my escape, like my travels were essentially me escaping like kind of real life essentially, and me wanting to like live life and see the world to the fullest and stuff. But then when it came to like what I was actually doing with my life, what meaning am I giving myself to life? Then it's like you have to I have to probably think about that. And I think, yeah, going back to Melbourne with that realization just gave me intention. It just gave me like
Mm,
understanding like, okay, it's like you got a mission now. You to fulfill this kind of goal or this happiness or whatever you want to call it. Like that's the intention when I came back with. I was like, okay, cool. This made me give me a direction. Yeah.
yeah, totally.
So yeah, like I think everyone needs to go for that. Like no, and it's like it's quite rough and not nice, but like once you kind of come out of it, you're like, okay, cool. It becomes a bit more clear, and that comes in different forms. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think people, because in my day job, I'm like I do some sort of like not pseudo. I wouldn't say I'm a career counselor, but I do like advising kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like people need to think that people need to like don't really think about that, and so it's like always good to take stock of like, all right, what do I actually want to do? What do I actually like doing?
Mm,
What do I don't like doing? Okay, let's figure that out, and then yeah, from there you can kind of make a choice.
yeah, definitely.
Mm.
I think through all this, I'm curious to know, are your parents and family, like, were they doing creative stuff as well? Were they pushing you to go and, go away and travel, go and
Yep.
try these things or that? Or were they sort of like, no, we'd prefer for you to do something sort of like more traditional and just sort of get a job and stop like
Yeah, then come
moving
on, they're
around?
Asian parents. What do you come on? Come on, that's give me choice. Like, no, no, they were like, they didn't get, and they still don't get what I'm doing, but like, but God bless them though,
Yeah.
they try. No, because like they're my like, yeah, growing up, like no one was creative really. Like my dad's like showing his creativity now when he's retired. He's playing
Mm.
like the ukulele.
All right, cool. Yeah, awesome.
He's in
Yeah.
a ukulele troupe with his community center. Um,
A troop. How many people are in the troop?
there's like a class. It's like a class. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a ukulele class. I think there's like a 10 or 20 of them. Something. It's
Oh wow.
pretty decent.
Yeah.
Um, ukulele troupe, or I don't know what they call
Yeah.
them. So yeah, like I not, but no one was really any like. There's no like out the spark of creativity. Like I was probably the most creative in my house just because I was drawing a lot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's about it. Yeah.
I'm sort of just thinking back, like when I was growing up, like both of my grandfathers, they were both like artistic and they drew
Oh,
and
right.
um not just drawing, like they were pretty good.
Mhm.
And like they or like painting or these sort of things
Yeah.
like
But they had some sort of creative outlet, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
totally. And then I think for a while I probably assumed that like my parents just weren't into that creative sort of stuff.
Right.
But then I think what I realized again when I was maybe just a little bit older was that sometimes I think you're just not into the same sort of creative things. But the idea of like what is creativity, what does it mean? It can be applied to a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
So like my dad was he had a company where they were basically coding systems for the mobile card for a long time.
Okay.
And I think he'd get really excited about like, um how that all worked
Yeah.
and doing that. And like as I've sort of seen later in life as well, it's like I'll go around to my parents' place and then dad will just be in the study and he'll be like, you know what, I'm working on today, just I'm doing like a history of Europe. I've got this document I put together and doing all this
That's
sort of
great.
stuff. And it's like, I guess people that you assume it's like not this I don't know what we just normally label as creativity, but there are just ways that like I guess everyone kind of has something that they're really kind of into.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really like we think of creativity as the standard stuff like painting, drawing, all that stuff. But really everyone's creative, but it's just in their own way. So
Mm,
like sports people, they're creative. They are like athletes are creative. It's just that their form of art is the running or is the sport that they play. And same applies to like mathematics. Like again, the people that are good at maths, the reason why they're good at maths is they are creative with the numbers.
yeah.
Um, Same with that. My friend Chat,
Yeah.
he loves air conditioning. That's his creativeness is from that air conditioning stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just a different art form. It's like everyone's got an art form. It's just like it's just specific to that person, and it's what like gets their kind of brain endorphins hit or whatever. That's what it is really.
Totally. When you say like air conditioning is an art, like I want to hear this person
Yeah,
talk
it's
about air
amazing.
conditioning.
You should.
Totally.
It's incredible. Like I learned a lot about like because it was this is the nerd talk. He was talking about how like when you got a tall building, the air conditioning needs to go because heat rises, so the temperature at the top is not the same as the temperature at the bottom. So you
Yeah.
need to use more power at the top.
Totally.
Then
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like, that
I'm
makes sense. Yeah. Oh my god. So I was completely enamored by that. Yeah. So and like I would say this as well to my friends how I'd rather be bored by someone's personality. So yeah, I'd rather be bored by someone's passion than their personality.
okay.
So
So
if you're passionately talking about this one thing you nerd about, I'm
yeah,
on board. But if you have like zero personality, or if you're just like a boring person, then I'm like, just kill me.
totally. I get you now, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like if you're someone who I guess is not, you might even be like just holding back on a lot of things, or
Yeah.
they just might not be, you know, you might not have ever been pushed into doing things
Yeah.
or found the confidence to do things or whatever it is. But yeah, just hearing someone talk about something that they're passionate about,
Yeah.
like it's just you could hear it go for hours.
Yeah. I was at like a wedding and someone was talking to me about their passion about four-wheel driving.
Yeah.
I was like, "Fuck yeah, tell me more about this world. I don't know about four-wheel driving." And literally the reason why and like people aren't like kind of they're a bit shy to talk about their passions because like obviously they might be like oh it's nothing, it's just a little thing I do. But then you're like, no, tell me more about this. This is the shit. This is what I
Totally.
want to hear. So this guy talked to me like a good hour about four-wheel driving, and I'm like, tell me where the best spots are. What car do you need? Have you ever had problems? Or like, tell me more about this. That was great.
Yeah. I guess it's also opening up yourself to be vulnerable
Yeah,
and
that's what it is.
it's like, oh, I better not talk about this thing that I'm really into because what if they laugh or ridicule me
Yeah,
or this, that, and everything else. And I still find like I think just absolutely everyone there's something that they're into
yeah,
that they don't tell other people about. And I don't mean that in like a shady way or anything like that. But I mean that I do genuinely believe that people are like, what do people do when they're just by themselves at home on weekends, at night, whatever,
yeah,
when they've got nothing else to do? And what I mean is that is like they've got no pressure to do something,
yeah,
it's nothing impending. Like, what do they end up doing?
yeah. What's the stimulus? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What do they reach for? What do
yeah,
they start doing? And I find that so interesting when you are able to get people to open up and start talking about that because you do suddenly see them talk about things in a completely different way
yeah.
to how you might have been speaking to them for 3 years or something like
Yeah.
that, and you just crack onto that, and I think suddenly you just get such a greater connection.
Yeah.
Um, once you open and start, yeah, it's like once you just start opening up, and the vulnerability kind of goes both ways, and then it invites you to feel comfortable to share something about yourself with
Exactly.
them
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well.
Exactly. It's everyone's got their little thing.
Everyone's got their thing.
Yeah. It's great.
Um, and so for a little while for you, that was improv when you came back.
Yeah. Improv was my my thing that I was doing for probably what 3 or 4 years, whatever. I
Mhm.
don't know. I forgot. Because I was there before you started, right? Is that right? No.
Uh,
Or we
at
started around the same time.
at where TOC?
Yeah.
You would have been there before I was, I
Okay.
think,
Yeah. All right.
because I was
Yeah.
doing stuff at LMA and
Yeah,
other
that's right.
places
Yeah. Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah. Because I started at the end of 2015.
Yeah, I started, I think, end of 2016
Okay, yeah. So yeah, would have
was
been
the
ahead,
first thing.
yeah, just a little bit ahead of you. But yeah, so I started in 2015, and did all the levels and was like, okay, this is my world, and I got swallowed into the world of
Hmm.
improv, which is again, I'm always a big fan of it. I'm always for it. I'm always like, yeah, go through it, go through the whole motions, go through like living it up, and being sucked into that world because it's the community is amazing. The people that you meet are amazing. Sure, there's politics. Sure, like in any group or anything you do,
Mm.
there will be politics. But the core of it is that there is a community of your own weird friends that you like and that you will connect with, and that's always something you just got to remember. Like you will
Yeah,
find your weirdos, and yeah, that's like the for me that was like the best benefit of the whole experience was like finding my weird people and then
yeah,
also like the tough moments were learning about like oh what I don't like what I'm not good at or what where my skill sets are and then developing that, yeah, so it's good, it's just like, and if anything it's like another college experience or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I was thinking that, yeah, I like that way you just say like find your weirdos.
Yeah,
Like,
find your weirdos, yeah,
I think it's a good way to put it.
yeah,
Because it's stuff that genuinely other people will just think is weird.
yeah,
But as soon as you then get into it, um, and you find other people that are so passionate about it too, it just fades away.
yeah,
You don't even think about um, that stuff. Like, and I think that is probably going back to maybe what I was touching on with high school related type of things.
mm,
Whereas it's like there was felt so much at stake for you to try and find your weirdos,
yeah,
because you would be so open to ridicule if
yeah, right.
that was not like a cool thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that just carries through with a lot of people, even as they get older, that there's still just some sort of hesitation to really, or there's still some sort of judgment that comes in, which is a bit of a high schooly type of thinking
Yeah.
of like, that's cool, that's not, I'm going to try the cool thing more than I'm going to try this other thing, even if I actually might be more interested in that.
Yeah. That could be it. But you know, we're adults now.
Exactly.
We should be grown ups. Well, grown ups in the sense of being comfortable with ourselves and trying different things. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's still hard. Like,
That's all right. No, I get it.
it still can be challenging to do that.
Well, yeah, just everyone deal with their shit. How about that? Just learn to deal with your shit and try stuff.
Yeah. That's
That's it. That's all I can. That's there you want. You want some advice? Deal with your shit. Try stuff. You'll be fine.
There we go. Put that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
I think something that, um, again, I guess sort of loops back into what you were studying at uni and improv as well was when you started Ethnic City.
Yeah, Epic City.
Um,
That's fun. I love. I'm still. It's still technically alive, but I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, no, Ethnic City was definitely it was like that was when I was like that I feel like that show made me kind of like encapsulate all I've learned from everything in my life, and I was like, okay, I'm using all these skills at full cylinder right now, because before that I was producing and performing different shows, and this one had the added purpose of like, oh, something that's like there's like a thing that's beyond me, that's higher than me. There's like a purpose that's
mm,
beyond me. Like there's like this societal, even though it's like it's a comedy show, but it's like there's some sort of like it feels like a societal like benefit or like I'm helping in my smallest way possible. And felt that kind of like high concept kind of like meaning attached to it. And so yeah, like literally that show I did like the first like we used to have like a Fridays for 4 weeks. You had 4 Fridays a week. Sorry, wait, 4 Fridays. Yeah, and each week you had this like residency. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we did the show, and the first one sold out and it was great. And the second one, the middle two were a bit okay, like they had reasonable numbers. And the last one we sold out again. And again, that was the best show I've ever seen in my life because I saw magic for the first time, real life magic.
Really?
Yeah, it was Lawrence Lung. He did a comedy magic
Oh, great.
set.
I thought
and-
you were talking like, as in like I saw magic, as in like it was just such
No,
an
I literally saw
incredible
magic.
experience. I saw magic, but it's
I
no,
saw magic.
magic on stage.
I saw magic. I literally saw magic. And yeah, everyone that's been like, everyone that was on that show was like, oh my God, that was the best goddamn show I've ever seen in my life. I was like, I know, there's magic. There was magic in there. Yeah. And so like those 4 shows was really like, that's when I started feeling I'm like, okay, I'm getting my groove here. I'm kind of understanding what I want to kind of do. And then that was just, like the perfect idea of what I like doing.
Yeah. Did you do another run and bring that back at all, or am
Yeah,
I?
we did a few shows.
Right.
A few shows here and there, just sporadically. And yeah, they're all great shows.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So as you said, like that was you sort of like feeling like you're finding your groove.
Yeah.
In a way, like the next sort of project you took on after that, would that be Gourmet Lazy?
Pretty much because we went to a pandemic. Yeah.
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 Yeah, because it went that show, then pandemic, and then and then obviously Gorman Lazy happened, and that's me moving into the world of film and TV. But I must say actually before Ethnic City, I actually like there were these shows that I feel were just as important to get to that point, which I'll talk more about. So I did do so when I finished all the levels and I didn't make it onto say a Herald team or I didn't um when I didn't get onto the Herald team straight away, I did like a bunch of like indie shows, so once a month to perform, and that's when I kind of got my reps, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, I didn't get on. That's fine. Whatever. It's okay. I'm still gonna live. I still like this community. I still want to be part of it. I'm just gonna do these. I got given monthly shows, so it was like the perfect avenue for me to develop that skill, that craft. And then, and so that like those kind of indie shows, they're on Sunday at 7 o'clock, so no one really came. But it was really good to just like do the motions of like, all right, this is how you produce. This is how you try and attract audiences. This is how you try and market stuff. So just all like everything's a learning experience essentially. And then so and that was called Sunday Buffet. So we did that show and it was like, okay, this is learning. And I did that show for about a year or two, maybe.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It was like on Sundays it was pretty much probably almost a year and a half maybe. I forgot, but yeah. After that, then I worked on a show called Talkie Time with Jackie Line.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah, so I did that was a variety show once, which was again had the same thing where it was like a 4 show residency run, and then after that eventually got onto like a monthly show for like about a year and a bit. And again, that's where I get like that's where I like did the had the hard yards of like learning producing, learning what's involved in producing, learning about collaboration, learning about okay, where my skill sets are, where my strengths are, where are my downfalls, and like and that was like that was a real learning curve, that whole like talkie times era, because I was like, okay, there are stuff that I can't do that like Tom Burton, who's like he was the star of the show essentially, and like he can do all these things. I'm like, I can't do that performing. My performance skills aren't like that. So and I didn't know, and this was the first time when I was like, okay, who am I outside of a group? I didn't know who I was outside the group. What value do I bring? Because when you do improv, like you're always in a group. You're never performing solo.
Yeah.
And like you're always about the group mind. And I was a very good group team player, but I was like, oh, but I don't know what my voice is outside of group. I got to figure that out. So then I started doing clowning, and I feel like that was where I was like, okay, this is good. This is where I'm figuring out what my voice is. And so and I really recommend clowning, but I really recommend clowning after you've done improv specifically because clowning. I don't know how people just do clowning straight up because it's such a weird like performance art.
Yeah.
Have
So
you
do you
done
feel
clown?
like you're building up, like you're building up some confidence by doing improv first
Yeah,
to then be able to go and take on a clowning class?
yeah, exactly. Because it's like in improv, you're with a scene partner and you're making things up, right?
Yeah.
With clowning, it's like the scene partner is the audience,
Mm.
and so that you have to work with the audience to develop what's funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like I don't know how people just go straight into that. Whereas I'm like, I had this improv background where I was like a bit more comfortable, like shitting on stage and being crap and
Yeah, yeah,
bombing,
yeah.
and then being like, okay, now I can figure it out. But yeah, so I feel like clowning was I'm always like big advocate of like trying to just do clowning. I did mine class with Fabio Motta, so just check him out on the Googles.
Well, Fabio Motto's going to teach some
There
stuff
you go.
now, so
Hey,
there you
Fabio. There you go.
go.
Awesome. Wonderful. Hey, you got reached out to Fabio. Cool. Yeah. So, and also like around that time, I did my first ever solo fringe show,
Mm.
and again, that came out of me wanting to figure out who I am outside of a group.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like, okay, what can I do? And so solo show was like, it was a dramedy, but like more or less about my kind of like based on my dad, but not really. It's
Mhm.
like a bit of me, a bit of my dad. And like it was called Sweet and Sour Dilemmas. And that show was like, okay, this is who I kind of am bringing about. This is who I am with all the skills and stuff I've learned, and me figuring out who I am as a performer. I'm like, okay, cool. And
Mm.
ever since then, I'm like, okay, slowly becoming more and more comfortable with who I'm as an individual performer.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Doing a show that I guess is about a parent or connected to one.
yeah.
How was your dad when he saw it?
He never saw it.
He never saw it.
No, I didn't. I never invited my mum and dad.
Oh, right.
One,
Okay.
it's in English, so that and they like they can speak English, but they're it's not to like it's not to native I guess native speaking
Totally.
level. But also I just think it would have been weird. But
Did you tell them that
I didn't
the
really tell
show
them
was
details about the show at all. So
okay?
I remember interviewing my dad about one segment of the show because the show ends with like a voiceover of my dad with my actual dad like talking about his first day in Australia.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, the context for the show is that it's about it's set in the kitchen of a Chinese restaurant, and it's about a Chinese chef who kind of regrets who kind of regrets moving to Australia after living a pretty comfortable life in in where he's from.
Hmm.
And then yeah, and that's kind of like him and Tim regaling stories
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
better life
Yeah.
overseas. But yeah, so I didn't really need to have my dad there.
Oh no, totally. And I don't think it's like I didn't just I guess I just assumed that they would have come, but I don't think that
Again,
like
Asian parents, man, come on.
I just don't think that like that people need to do that either.
Mm,
Like I don't think it's this thing that yeah you have to if you're making a show about someone from your family and like working stuff into that, it doesn't have to be this thing of like this big emotional moment where you're bringing them to come see it and have a
yeah,
big revelation of like
yeah,
all that sort of stuff. So um yeah, but I think that's yeah, it's just I guess an interesting concept to bring through to like interview your dad as the starting point for that and then
yeah. It was a fun show.
try to
Like,
make something from that.
and I like during the show, I was making dumplings as well. So I was like, I
Yeah.
had a camera on top of me. I was just making dumplings. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm pretty happy with that show, but like, I'm pretty, and like, I was happy for what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, now on to better things.
Yeah, but so that was your first solo
That was my
show.
first ever solo show. Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Like, because I definitely hear what you say when you're saying like, especially with something like improv, which is so group based, that you can really get lost in that group mind,
Yep.
and you lose your own voice, or maybe you might not lose your own voice, but you haven't found your own voice
Yeah,
yet.
I haven't, and that was my thing. I haven't found my own voice.
Yeah.
I thought I knew who I was, but then it turns out like, oh no, I'm not actually that person. I'm
Yeah.
actually, I'm not very good at this, like, this style or whatever. I'm like, I got to figure that out,
Yeah.
and then hopefully maybe I can contribute better if I do go back into it and stuff. But yeah, it's all like figuring out who the creative, the voice was always hard. It was probably yeah, like with anyone, like you got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so, did you get a? I guess after doing that show, did you get like a? Was it like a big sort of like breath of fresh air of like, oh, I finally found that I'm like I can do a show by myself. That I'm, people
Yeah.
actually coming to see and pushing out there, and this is all me
Yeah.
again. Was that, I guess, yeah, was that kind of like a I don't want to say a turning point because it sounds like you were sort of heading in
Yeah.
this trajectory to begin with, but
It was
yeah,
more of just like it did give me confidence for sure. I don't know. It was like, oh, cool, I'm on the right path rather than a big revelation. Like
yeah,
I can do this is who I am as a creative.
totally, yeah, yeah,
Um, it just gave me maybe more of a direction. Like, oh, okay, these are the things that like you like playing around with, um, and like exploring and yeah, and like that's the kind of road which you should be taking.
yeah.
But yeah, I think and I think I'm still developing that as we speak now. Like um, yeah. So I think it was definitely on the right path for sure.
Was that show? I'm just sort of thinking now. Was there that kind of, I guess, a bit of inspiration for Gourmet Lazy in the sense? Because I'm just curious in the sense of both got the cooking themes, both got the
Yeah.
parental themes.
The
Was that like is that where the idea came from to do Gourmet
Not
Lazy, or is that just
really.
sort of separate
It's a
that
separate
came
thing.
from?
Like I guess is like I didn't realize my thing was like, oh, I like food, and apparently
Yeah,
that's like a thing that's like, oh, that's your strength point. I'm like, really? Is it? It's just food. But like, I mean, just in personal life, I just like eating food and like going to places and eat. It's really,
yeah,
it's just the bare bones of it. Is like I just like eating, and I grew up in a Chinese restaurant, so I'm like, okay, it's part of my family, part of my identity, I guess. Um, but the idea for Gourmet Lazy was uh was mainly because I was like watching Chef's Table and I was thinking like, how would you do a
mm,
shit version of Chef's Table
yeah,
with like, could you do the same thing with Chef's Table but with like crappier foods?
yeah,
And I was like, that's a funny idea, and I didn't really think about it. And then I was like, over a couple of months, I was like, oh, it's pretty actually fun idea. What's my shit version of that? Will be just spam and rice and eggs.
yeah,
That'd be fun. Like, oh, what's like? Why do I like that so much? Oh, well, because I like eating. Because my mum would make that for me on when she was lazy on Sundays. Lazy. That's a funny good concept. Oh well, let's just have like a show about like, what about a show about like lazy foods? And then it kind of was that was kind of the basis of it really.
mm,
And I was actually going like I remember it was like 2020? Yeah, 20 at the start of 2020. I met with someone else. Um I met with a guy called yeah, sorry, a guy called Phoenix. He was doing stand up back then, and he's a videographer, and I just asked him about like, oh, how would you make this work? Like, how would you do this kind of setup, like cameras? Because yeah,
mhm.
he knew the camera stuff. How would you do this? And he's like, oh, you can do this. I'm like, oh, cool. And I remember because I do journaling every day. Big fan of journaling. Check out my social medias, and you'll see me journal at the start on the 1st of January. See a post about journals. Um,
Okay,
but
so just on that, so like, is that every day you get up,
yeah,
you
every
journal, or is it the end of the day?
end of the day. So
End of
every end of the day, and the way I do it is that I just document what I did that day.
Oh, cool, yeah,
And some people do it different versions where they talk about how they're feeling. Some people talk about like what they want, to manifest and all that stuff. I'm just more of a document. Like, oh, woke up at 7 o'clock, ate breakfast, took a shit,
yeah,
just
yeah,
real mundane stuff.
yeah,
And
great,
I find that like by doing that, it kind of just gives me, it opens up avenues where I'm like, oh, I did feel a bit shit today when this happened, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
but like most of the times it's just really just a documentation.
Yeah, so it's like the emotional release is not the main purpose of it.
No,
It could happen sometimes, but it's
yeah.
not the.
If anything, it's more of a historical document.
Yeah, yeah.
That if I die, then we're like, oh well, this Brendan won. In 2015, he was, and on the 3rd of April, he was doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like literally, like I'm fascinated by those kind of diaries. I was inspired to do that because of Michael Palin's diaries,
Okay,
because
right.
he had those kind of diaries, and it was so fun. It was so interesting seeing him write. Oh yeah, started our first ever draft of this sketch about a parrot.
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah.
"Holy shit, that's like one of the most famous sketches in the world." And, like, it just has a one small little, like, nothing sentence,
Yeah, yeah,
and I just
totally.
love those kind of, like, things.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating to get glimpses of like, yeah, where these big ideas for
Yeah.
something came from, and something that is so famous and is known everywhere.
But it's yeah, and that's gonna be part of the reason why I have the diary. And that sorry, so that's what inspired me to have a diary. Sorry, I was back to my story. In 2020, I remember for the first time in my diary, because I've been doing journaling for, like, maybe 3, 4 years by then,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Let's try and do resolutions."
Okay, yeah,
let's see how it goes. And I just literally wrote just a bunch of resolutions that I wanted to do. Like it was more like project based, being like, oh, I want to work on this, want to work on this, want to work on this. One of them was Gourmet Lazy, and I was like planning to just do it like on my by myself with a shitty camera or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, all right, well, these are these, like, and I was literally gonna like get me do my meal, get maybe a friend do their meal, and just have that as like content or something, and just put it on internet, whatever. And then literally, pandemic happened, and then ABC did a call out about oh, we're looking if you got an idea, blah 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 for funding, and I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It was literally the only reason why I sent that submission form was because it was 5 questions long.
That sounds like a great submission form. Like
Yeah, right.
that's yeah.
It was so easy to do, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, okay, I can do this." And I just did it. I banged out in like one night, and like wrote a pitch deck and what like just proposals and stuff, and just sent it off and be like, "Huh, I got nothing else. I'm in a pandemic.
So-
What else gonna do?" And then yeah, and then somehow I got a call, and then calls turned into meetings, and then meetings became, "Hey, you got this bunch of money, make it."
That's
I
amazing.
was like, "Fuck, what?"
Yeah. How long had you been, I guess, sitting on or working on that idea before that happened?
Literally start that year.
Yeah.
So beyond that, I was like, "Oh, it's an idea," but I haven't really given much thought. It
Yeah.
was
Cool.
literally, and then once I kind of like, once the ABC got on board and started thinking seriously about it, then I started thinking more about like, oh, what actually is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's when like they, to their credit, they came up with the idea of having a parent there
Okay.
with the person,
Yeah.
because it was going to be just like, I'm the host and here's the guest, but then like it kind of came to the realization, was like, oh yeah, you don't need me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just have the parents, and like the kind of relationship between these two will be the show essentially.
And so working with them and them, I guess, making that suggestion, was that it sounds like it was a pleasant collaborative process there. It wasn't
Mostly,
this.
yeah, mostly. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that initial when they gave me that note, I was like, no, it's my show. I want to be my show. And then it took me a little, like, embarrassingly, a little bit longer than it should have to kind of come on board to their version of it. Because I was like, I'll be in the show. Come on, it's
Yeah.
my show. Then I was like, no, you're being egotistic. Just chill out. Just let like that is a pretty good idea. It doesn't change the idea in a way. It just, it gives, if anything, it makes it a bit more better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess so your initial version of the show you were going to be, it was just going to be you
It was me and like the guest.
and the guest. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the guest would show me how they'll make this lazy meal,
Yeah.
which now thinking about it, it is again cringe.
Yeah. No. It's just I think it's interesting how the idea changed from being like I'm central to this,
Yeah,
and I don't take that in like I know you said is that egotistical like I don't even if you made it as that show I don't think it would have come across as being like egotistical either.
mm,
But interesting to go from that to then being like it's just purely all about the guest and I'm just basically making the thing.
yeah, yeah, and like that was something I was like, kind of, again, when you build self awareness and you're like, okay, cool, actually this is probably the better idea, because it shows the dynamic between the relationship between the mother and child, and how they like like what I like about it when you watch it, it's like, oh, you can clearly tell this is a mother and child. There's all this subtext that you can just sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're making something together, and it's like the relationship between it. There's like, it's all not said. It's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
just, you just see it, and it's beautiful, and it's quite very beautiful.
You can
And I
really
just,
feel that.
yeah, you
I
can really
think
feel.
I think when you watch the episodes, that's what like you get that very real
Yeah,
dynamic to it.
yeah,
And you do pick up on those little like those little looks or those little movements or just any even little things like that,
yeah.
which do say a lot of like I guess in some ways parents being parents.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
stuff.
exactly. And the body language, like everyone's, I was so cool, like filming it and just seeing the guest, all these grown adults just revert back to like being a kid,
Yeah.
and being like, just all right, mom, just all right, sure. They're just like clueless in the kitchen, and his mom just takes over, and they're just like, all right, what do I do next, mom? Oh, okay. They just revert back to their childhood
Yeah.
self, and quite it was quite interesting just seeing that. Yeah, it was actually quite fun.
I find it quite interesting too, like how when you get like an adult child with their parent, and this is something I do too. So like, it's like certain ways that the adult child will behave towards the parent, I think triggers the parent to be more parental
Yeah,
to them, even though they're a grown adult.
yeah,
But I think it also goes the other way too.
yeah, yeah,
That certain times that the parent will just start being more parental
yeah.
to who is a grown adult, and then as the defense mechanism for that the adult child, they do become more immature in
Yeah.
their responses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do that. And like I've definitely had it like things with family where like nothing major, but it would just be a small stupid thing just like that just happens for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, why have I gotten all worked up about this?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
but I think it is interesting that those dynamics that both like can trigger each other with just the small things, which then it's almost like it does take the relationship back 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, and yeah, like, you see that when you just go back to speak to mum and dad. It's
Yeah.
the same, like, yeah, we're just doing the same roles again, like, we
Yeah.
revert back to it. That's all.
Something else about Gourmet Lazy,
Yep.
which I thought was cool, was just the fact that it was made during the pandemic, like you said,
Yeah.
and it wasn't looking at a thing. It wasn't looking at this thing going, "Here's this idea that I have. Um, oh, I can't make it now. I'll make it later. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do this." It was. I don't know if was the idea always that. I guess I'm trying to work out what aspect of the question I'm asking was. You came up with the idea during the pandemic that had already started, right?
So, I came up with the idea before pandemic.
That was just before it started.
Yep.
So in that initial idea, was there something more to it which would have required, like, say, filming on location, like in other locations with more people or anything like that? Like, I guess, did it have to be stripped down at all
No, it was pretty
for the
much
pandemic?
that.
Or that was just
It
it.
was, like, more or less like, yeah, more or less just doing it in front of a kitchen, like, like, my only requirements was, like, I had to have a forward-facing stove.
Yeah.
That was literally my only requirement is like that. It was in a kitchen, forward facing stove, and then we just do it.
Yeah.
And that happened. It was, yeah, it got pushed back a few times because of the lockdowns. Because yeah, every time we were like, oh, we're about to start, oh, we didn't, and
Yeah.
so that was quite frustrating. Because towards the end of it, I was like, I just want to make it, and you know, being like, I just want to spread some joy in the world.
Yeah. Totally.
Something, I don't know. And so yeah, it got delayed, and we eventually got going at the first week of December. We're like, oh shit, we're back on. Let's do this. And so yeah, when we did it, it was just such like, yeah, just felt good to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it as well. Just I really love when you have, I guess, simple ideas, but I don't want to say simple ideas in reducing
Mm.
what
No,
actually
it
goes
was a
into
simple
the
idea.
idea.
No, I
But a
agree.
simple idea that's like executed well and it just doesn't try and overcomplicate things.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and it's a simple idea, and like for me, like simple is always the best. That's all. Like I am not someone who can make it complicated because I'm not
Yeah.
smart. No, I just simple is the best. Just make it direct, make it effective. Like what like, and this is what like was a bit weird about the whole resolution thing. Was like I was gonna make it. Like I was just gonna do it. Like I had energy just to like make the thing,
Yeah.
and just it was luckily that I just had the backing of a national broadcaster to give me money for it. You
Yeah.
know, it was just, and so the desire, the push, the drive or whatever, it was just like I'm gonna make it, and and it happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It was kind of cool that that was an interesting experience, and I wish I could do more.
I do like that idea was something that you could go off and do by yourself
Yeah,
if you didn't have that backing come through.
yeah.
So as you've gotten older, have you found that you are more likely to cut out sort of complications from ideas when you're making them? Um, so I guess where I'm going is I feel like when I was younger making things,
Mm,
like I'd always add in more things, add in more things, add in more things, and
yeah,
you kind of get a bit carried away. But then I feel like as I've gotten older, I've been like, let's do a bit less. Let's do a bit less, but do it better.
yeah,
And focus on simplifying the idea. Whereas I think when I was younger, I thought that the idea always had to be more interesting or it was never like a good enough or creative enough idea as it was. So it would end up
right,
going to lengths, I think, to overcomplicate things.
right. No, I think with this, I think maybe I'm more about like I still am like, what's the spin? What's the twist? Like I'm still always about that. So, but I think more of a simpler version of it. I've always had that like, I think that philosophy of like, okay, well, what's the difference? Or what can I make it? That it's like the blogging thing, for example. You know,
Yeah.
like oh, people are writing about their experiences. Well, I don't want to do that. What's the twist to my blog? Oh, I'll do mini essays.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just I think I've always had that kind of philosophy where it's like, oh, like this is the form. What can I do slightly different? That's my thing. That's like that kind of jives with what I like.
Yeah. I think that's great if you always had that. Like
Yeah,
that's
hopefully.
no, because seriously, because I think it is a thing that I think it takes a lot of confidence to actually get to the place where, yeah, I can do something simple and that's all it is. And the fact that I'm doing it, I'm making it, it'll be great, it'll be entertaining, there'll be something in there.
Yeah.
or like there's
Yeah.
enough in this simple idea.
Yeah. And like as long so I have this rule, which is my own rule, and not many people agree with it, but I have to be at least 70% happy with it
Okay.
at
Yep.
the end product. That's all. That's because I realize the perfection never comes, right? It's like
Yeah.
100% is never going to
Yep.
happen. So 70% is like a B.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I love a B. Like, come on, that's a great mark. And so I'm always like, as long as I'm 70% happy with it, that is all I can ask for, and the rest will take care of itself.
Totally.
So yeah.
I think it reminds me of something that Christo says. I don't know if you know Christo. He's a designer from LA, basically started up a design agency blind 25 years ago, and now
Mm.
runs the Future, which is educating designers on the business of design.
Oh, cool.
Super knowledgeable dude. And you just watch him talk, you can watch him talk for hours. But one of the things he talks about is, again, that I guess pushing back against being a perfectionist,
Yeah.
and the idea that you can do something that's 70% and you show it to someone else who's watching it, or using it or experiencing it, whatever you're sort of making, they can't tell the difference between a 70% and 100%.
Yeah. 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 It's
So
the
if you're
details.
getting caught up with like it has to be better, has to be better, and pushing for that 85%, 90%, 95, da 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 da,
Yeah.
da, it's like often that is not going to be discernible to the viewer at all. They can't actually tell the
Yeah.
difference because they don't have, the extreme knowledge in that area, and it's not going to impact their level of enjoyment of it.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's like we see the details, everyone else sees the bigger thing, and that's fine. Yeah.
Totally. See, I think for
Mhm.
me, improv was a big thing that changed my focus on that.
Oh, cool.
Because improv is like something that you have to be, you know, you can't be, oh, this has to be perfect, because it
Mm.
never ever will be. And then you end up finding fun and joy in the fact that it isn't perfect.
Yeah.
And then you sort of live for that. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, this is really great. I love having the shackles off here. So I know, sort of taking that into like my design work, that was a big shift that I was like, oh, and I think that stopped me being such like a perfectionist
Oh,
with
good.
that work. Um,
Yeah. I always I learned this rule about and it's just something I've done for my producing stuff as well. It's like done is better than perfect. Just get
yeah,
it done.
yeah,
Like no matter how shit you think it is, get it done. Because then at least you have something to work with, or show for. Yeah, I've worked with people like you who are like quite perfectionists, and it's like, well, what's the point? Like, we had a deadline. Now no one's going to kind of come to the show.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's just like you got to just set the deadline, do as much as you can, get it done and release it. At least it's done, and then we can worry about the next stage, getting people to the show, whatever.
yeah,
So yeah, just follow the rule of done's better than perfect. Obviously, work hard at it. Like
totally.
work hard as don't just like do as much as you can with it. Like, but at the end of the day, yeah, 70% happy, and you have the deadline. You just usher it out.
Totally. And yeah, it doesn't mean like ignore all the details,
No,
or
yeah,
don't put effort in like you're saying, but it's like just getting it done. I think this is also a good thing that applies to uh, not just delegating, but also collaborating, working with people, and
yeah,
actually just fully believing in what they're doing, and you mentally giving them full responsibility for that.
yeah,
So if you still just have this perfectionist thing in your head, you might be like, yeah, cool, you're in charge of lighting, this, that. But then you might be sitting there going like, oh, I'd probably change that. I'd change that. I'd change that. Whereas if you're like, hey, whatever this idea in my head of perfect is, if I'm not going for that, I don't even like know what's right,
yeah,
you know? So just being able to let go and go, cool, hey, you want to do that? Go. You do that. Cool. I trust you to do that. Let's go. I'll move on to something else.
yeah.
I feel like it also really helps in your ability to collaborate with other people.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. And I feel like that again, that's where improv comes in. It's like it helps you to be a collaborator. And it just kind of like tells you like I think it's like what's important to you? What's the real is it this microcentimeter of a thing that's off, or is that the real problem, or is it like the color maybe, or I don't know, something like that. Is there another is it on point? Fine, cool. If it's not, then don't worry about it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I feel like that should be the focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I think moving on from Gourmet Lazy,
Mhm.
the next major project would be your short film, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes, dumplings.
Yeah.
Yes, best dumplings. Um,
Which you also crowdfunded for
yeah,
either a
crowdfunded.
bunch of was that all the funding or a part of the funding?
No, part funding. So literally straight after Gourmet Lazy, I was like, I had this like momentum where I was like, I want to just keep making this thing because it was amazing. Um, let's do that short film. I wrote this short film like 2015.
Oh, right.
It was
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was a while ago, but I just remembered liking. I just remember really enjoying the idea of being like, oh, well, it's dumplings. I've never seen anything about dumplings before.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to. That's right. So the story, the script came out. The idea came from like I used to be part of like a Melbourne screenwriters group, where they'll do meetups once a month. And one of the months, the guy organized it, Gene. He was he was like, oh, let's do a little fun exercise where inspired by Paris Je t'aime. Let's do a Melbourne I Love You kind of thing.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
writes a short film about Melbourne. And so, we went away and we all wrote whatever our version of Melbourne is. And so I based my version on Chinatown. And I was like, representing Chinese people,
Mhm.
Asian culture, or the Chinatown being so vital to Melbourne and stuff like that. And so I wrote this short film, which was pretty much inspired by the burger episode of How I Met Your Mother. Do you remember that episode?
Okay. I didn't watch
You
too
never
much.
watched it? Okay.
No,
So
no, no.
in the episode, like the Marshall, one of the main characters, thinks about this burger that he's like the best burger in New York, and so the whole episode is them finding this best burger of New York, and at the end of the episode, they find it.
Yeah.
Spoiler: they find it, and I always thought like how that was so underwhelming that they found it, and so my thing was like, well, let's create that and make that the idea. Like it's that they always try and find the best dumplings. And so yeah, then I wrote the thing, and then pretty much left it alone. I was like, oh cool, well I can't make it.
Yeah.
Um, and like there was some false starts to trying to get it up going, but yeah, then I think
So when you say you left alone and you were like, I can't make it.
yeah, it was more just like I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the money, and yeah, and I kind of like handed over to someone else who just kind of wasn't just kind of didn't. There was another director on board, and they kind of just didn't have the time or
Sure.
energy to do it, so it just kind of fell through. And so then I was like, oh well, I'll just leave it. It might never be made. So then I went after Gone Malaysia. I was like, I really want to do something. I want to like make something. So then then I was like, oh well, this is my next project. Cool, I'll make the short film. And
Yeah.
so then I revisited that idea, and I was like thinking about how I want to make it, and I still really enjoy the idea. I was like, oh cool, I love this idea. Just about three friends trying to find the best dumplings, easy. And so then I started thinking about more about how it has happened, how this actually make this actually happen, and then I applied for a grant from City of Melbourne, and I got the grant, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh sick, that's a partial grant. I was like, and then I was like, oh well, I'll just cover the remaining. Um, oh that's no, sorry, I did that, and then I was like, oh well, I need this much money. I think it was like, I think the budget was like about 8 to 10,000 or something.
Okay. Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, I got about three grand from City of Melbourne, and I was like, well, I need this about 5 grand to make. No, wait, it was about originally the budget was 6 grand. That's what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I need 3 grand, so maybe I should just crowdfund this or do it myself. And yeah, it was Caitlin Staples, friend of the podcast. There you go. Friend
No,
of the
like,
podcast.
yeah,
Friend of the
definitely.
life.
Yeah.
She convinced me to just go, you might as well just do 5,000. I was like, yeah, sure, awesome. I won't get there, but well, might. And so then I put the crowdfunding thing where I set up the crowdfunder and yeah, made that happen. And yeah, and then so then somehow I got 5 grand from just crowdfunding, and then the remaining I just put in myself.
Yeah.
And then it went out of budget, as filming always goes.
Yeah.
And so the total was, I think, 12 or 13 grand was the budget for the short film.
Which is still like that's not that much compared to.
It's not that much, but it is much.
No,
And
no, totally.
That's the weird thing. It's like
It's not that much for someone who was not involved in raising the money for it.
yeah,
But for you, you're like, that's still a bit that I had to
money.
like get together.
some
And
savings I had. Yeah, yeah.
totally. I
So
totally
yeah,
get that.
but that's the crazy thing about, and this is the film world. This is like what's crazy is like that's micro budget for a short film, right?
Yeah.
And there's people that do it for even less, and it's like fucking. It's like, oh my god, yeah. So anyway, the film world is just that's the annoying thing about film world is just like how much it costs to make something.
Yeah.
That's the annoying thing about this art form. It's like
It's
stupidly expensive.
Totally. But I still feel though that like you've sort of shown with these things that I guess what I like is you didn't let like that stop you from actually making the project, because I feel like a lot of times it would, someone would have that idea and it's like, well, I can't do it. That's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, like looking like, how can I fund this? I'm going to fund it part myself, part through crowdfunding, part through getting this grant, and then the thing gets made.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. It is, and it is, at the end of the day, it is great. Like, I've made something. It's always like like the end product is it's there, it's done.
Yeah.
It's I can see it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like having something made is always just it's always again done better than perfect. It's not perfect. It's not a dramatic Oscar-winning short film, but it's just a fun short film which I'm very proud of. And at the day, it's like that's all that matters. Like I made the thing. I remember someone told me, like, I was talking to my friend, and I just had this realization where I was like, more people own houses than have their own TV show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I was like, wow, I've created something, like I've made a web series, I've made a short film, and like only so many people have done that. But there's more people that in my head that have actual these life things like
Totally.
houses and
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like more people have houses than TV shows. I'm one of the few people that can say that I've made a TV show,
yeah.
and which is like an achievement. And I just have to remind myself all the time, like you've done something. Like,
Yeah.
it's because I'm always I'm a bit itchy because I'm like I want to go to the next thing. I want to like do whatever the next thing is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But without sort of judging. Like,
Yeah.
It sounds like you're not judging what you're doing. You're just making it and then
yeah,
having fun with that, and then going like, cool, great, I've made that, and not dwelling on it. Like, I know some people who've made things and then they've gone, oh no, I hated this, I'm not doing it again. That's it. It's ruined it for me.
right.
And I think that's possibly because maybe it didn't turn out, say, exactly how they wanted it to.
Yeah.
It didn't come out to a particular standard that they had in their heads.
Yeah.
But being able to just go, and like the stuff you made is great. So I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's not to that standard,
Yeah.
but just being able to go, cool, I've made this. What's next?
Yeah. And that's always my thing. Is like I want to keep doing stuff, and so it's like hard for me to appreciate what I've done.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my flaw.
That's your flaw.
That's my human flaw.
Yeah. But then sometimes, like now, you get to sit here and like, look back at it and go, hey, actually, I have done quite a bit. And like, even just talking to you now, like, hearing the things that you've done, like I knew about a bunch of them, obviously, but you're like, oh, I also did this, I did this blog, I did this, I made music, I did that. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Doesn't feel like it, but yeah, maybe. I don't know. I always feel like it's never enough, but that's just me.
Yeah.
And also probably my Asian parenting, upbringing. But yeah, no, I don't know. It could, and like it could be, but also like yeah, I think it's just what's next is more interesting. Whatever that may be.
Thanks very much for listening. If you would like to keep up to date on future episodes, please consider subscribing. And for more information on what we're doing, our future workshops, and everything else we're up to, please head to spaceandearth.co.